Children of the Cosmos. Prologue 1:1. In the beginning, before the time of monsters or gods, men or beasts, elements or atoms, there existed only a single entity within the barren, forlorn universe. Her name was the Universal Womb, and she would be the one destined to herald the beginning of reality. Although no mortal has ever directly experienced the dark light of her endless presence, the truth of her existence has ceaselessly echoed between the conscious entities of her countless descendants. It is through these inherited memories that a mortal mind may briefly experience the inconceivable existence of their collective progenitor. To be visited by such an echo results in a maddening enlightenment, for soon prophetic, delirious dreams tear away the comforting veil of blissful ignorance and invade the sleeper's sanity. Those who look upon her will bear witness to an endless, corpulent expanse of flesh and veins, sebaceous cysts that erupt with the force of supernovas, and gaping orifices gasping with the power of the heaviest of black holes. To describe her true enormity would be a futile effort, for there was nothing else in existence to compare. She was a lone entity within the blank universe, so without relativity, she appeared to be both without end, and yet able to fit within the palm of one's hand. Some who have experienced visions of the womb recall the disfigured face of a gentle woman forming and twisting upon the endless surface. However, it is more likely that the fragile psyches of those who dream of her are simply creating a more relatable and comprehensible appearance to protect the bearer from plunging further into insanity. The truth of her image is that of pure chaos. Formless, twisting spires of skin and muscle, oceans of snapping teeth and whipping tongues, forests of serpentine appendages flailing mindlessly, and trillions of bloodshot eyes gazing fearfully into the empty abyss of non-existence. The Universal Womb was at first content with her endless solitary existence. Nothing would happen, and while she remained the one singular entity, the pain and fear of disparity would not plague reality. Her thoughts and feelings would repeat endlessly, as would the timeless regeneration of her expansive body. As such, reality would continue on in endless cycle, though with each trillionth cycle, a thought would deviate for a moment longer, or she would fail in regulating her volatile emotions for a fleeting flash. As her cycles continued to diverge from the singularity of reality, the womb slowly succumbed to the primordial imperative which would, from this moment, infect all descendant life, the inevitable instinct to create children. This new, consuming madness drove the womb to pluck out and swallow her countless eyes. They squirmed and searched every corner of her corpulent inner labyrinth to find an answer to procreation, and with time, eventually found one. Deep within the center of the womb lay 1,000 ancient eggs, each one entirely unique, sharing not a single quality with their prenatal siblings. The eyes watched the eggs eagerly, though even with all the patience in the universe, they would not hatch. Unable to wait any longer for the hatching of her twitching eggs, the Universal Womb became maddened with ambition. The fleshy cavern of her immense ovary shook with the twisting chaos of desire, and soon hundreds of serpentine appendages erupted from the thick, veiny walls. In a frenzy to meet her children, the appendages grasped the largest and greatest egg, lashing viciously at the thin, membranous shell. Again and again was the barrier assaulted, until an apocalyptic crack echoed throughout the cavern as the crust split, and outpoured a galaxy of foul, dark yolk. The eyes watched in anxious anticipation as the dark fluid steamed and dispersed, revealing the firstborn child of the universe. However, the womb would learn the folly of her reckless impatience, for her baby did not stir. The yolk dissipated into the splintered flesh of the cavern, leaving behind a twisted form, an impossibly long, thin worm, a beast of sickly bioluminescent, pale skin with a torn hide that's length would one day stretch entire galaxies. His face was void of all features, save for a great, protruding horn and a gaping maw that rested in a lifeless grimace, full of blunt teeth and forked tongues. And so it was that the second entity had entered existence. The pale worm, already dead before birth, now lay rotting within the sacred ovary of his mother. Although 999 eggs remained, the first loss was unbearable for the womb. In a psychotic state of grief and despair, she demanded retribution for the death of her firstborn. Deliriously hateful towards herself, the womb sent the serpentine appendages that had assaulted the egg to be systematically ravaged by her other vengeful limbs, before being imprisoned within filthy chambers of protruding, jagged cartilage. These acts of extreme violence and cruelty did not sate her, and soon she turned her wrath to the eyes that were witness to the tragic birth. Without mercy, they were herded together before being brutally blinded by great geysers of gastric acid and sent to wander senselessly through the endless labyrinth of her body. Although she knew these acts of self-harm were destructive and impractical, they still managed to bring her a deluded comfort, feeling that somehow justice was met. Through all of this savagery, the pale worm continued to rot next to the remaining eggs. It was becoming apparent that the surrounding flesh was also beginning to fester, causing the corpulent ground to blister and turn black with necrosis. The womb knew that soon the creeping plague would spread to her remaining eggs, so with great panic and anguish, she aborted the pale worm into the empty abyss of the cosmos. The womb watched as her son floated lifelessly into the nothingness of reality. Despair wrenched each of her trillion hearts, knowing that the child would never know the embrace of his mother. As the pale worm drifted into nothingness, reality shattered as the universe was suddenly consumed by the greatest, most chaotic force imaginable. Disparity. Where there was once only life, now there was death. Where once there was only dark, now there was a pale light. Where once there was only one, now there were two. The universe now had two entities, a concept more terrifying and destructive than any other. In complete, mindless desperation and regret, the womb twisted her surface, causing cruelly barbed tentacles to explode outwards into the abyss to grasp and devour her drifting child. However, the pale worm had now wandered too far from his mother's reach, leading to the inescapable reality that the universe was now destined to begin. The abyss was no longer empty, for a great, dead being was now forever floating throughout nothingness, slowly decaying and spreading particles of his corpse all throughout reality. The universal womb knew what she had set in motion. She had always known that she would be destined to herald the beginning of reality, though she could never have imagined that creation would be ignited from the reckless, irrational expulsion of her stillborn. She had always dreamed of the beginning, always believing that reality would form from precise planning and structured expansion. She looked out towards the cosmos, gazing upon the fetid trail the pale worm was leaving behind, as he continued to bloat and stretch, an endless expanse of death and decay. The universal womb knew that if she languished upon this moment, that one day, far into the future, after her remaining life was spent and her ambition had failed, the only reality would be the lonely, floating corpse of her child. She knew this future must not come to pass, for her hearts could not bear the empty existence of such a universe. And so it was that the universal womb would look towards her remaining eggs to save reality from her careless aberration. She would find a way to birth the first true life of the universe, beings that could debride the corruption of their older brother, creatures who would burrow into unknown dimensions and release the dormant ether of creation, the first true children of reality, the primordial maggots.